You are the sum total of your ancestors. Let's discuss the human story and where we have come from, and how by understanding this, we can better navigate the 21st century. Also, for me personally, by seeing what our ancestors have already been through, actually makes me quite hopeful about surviving the future, despite all the doom and gloom and fear the media are constantly feeding us. So stick around and let's look at the 3 primal brains and how modern life can sometimes hijack them and lead them to places that are not good for our well-being. Stay tuned. Hello fellow Fandabby Deep Divers, how's it going? Here with another pondering video. So in my previous couple of ponderings, I've essentially been introducing some foundational concepts and ideas that I hope to keep building upon in future videos. In this video, I'm actually sharing the second lesson from my online school, Resilient Roots Survival Training from the Art of Living, as it gives a fairly broad but condensed perspective on the human story and the building of our primal minds, which will help us understand ourselves, and by understanding ourselves we can better navigate the challenges of the 21st century. Also gives you a wee taster of what's going on Resilient Roots. There's a link below if you want to find out more about it. Now, a bit of context, this was the second lesson that I'd ever filmed for Resilient Roots. I'd essentially written a script and put it on a teleprompter. I'd never used a teleprompter before, so if you're wondering why I might be talking just a bit more robotic than normal, it's because I'm using a teleprompter and I'd never used it before. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this deep dive into the building blocks of our primal minds. Now, let's start with a fact to ponder about. You are the sum total of your ancestors. Now let's think about some numbers here just within the relatively recent past. In order for you to exist, in order for you to be watching this right now, you needed 2 parents. For that, you needed 4 grandparents. For them to exist, you needed 8 great-grandparents. And from them, you needed 16 great-great-grandparents. And on it goes. So if you go back 12 generations, roughly 400 years in the 17th century, where I'm doing my Highlander series, in order for you to exist, you needed 4,094 ancestors. Think of that many people standing out in a field right now looking at you. Think about how many life stories. Think of the struggles, the battles, the wars, the illnesses, the happy times, the falling in love, the breakups, the stories and music shared, the hopes and dreams chased, all leading up to this moment. And that's just within the last 400 years. So let's take a look further back in time. Now, according to evolutionary science, the Earth was formed about 4 billion years ago, and the first evidence of single-celled life about 3.7 billion years ago. The first molecular complex life about 600 million years ago. Our early human ancestors appeared about 2 million years ago, when we were first considered Homo sapiens is roughly 200,000 to 100,000 years ago. Now, over 90% of human history, we have been hunter-gatherers, living in small nomadic tribes between 100 and 150 people. Agriculture only appeared in the last 12,000 years, and this is when people settled down and civilization started. The Industrial Revolution started around the mid-1700s. The internet was invented in 1983, the first iPhone in 2007, and now you are using the internet to watch another human being tell you all this. Now you can see the evolutionary story in the very makeup of our brains, and the neuropsychologist Rick Hanson illustrates this in a beautifully simple way. He describes us as having 3 brains that have evolved on top of each other through time. He describes the first and oldest as the reptile brain, otherwise known as the brainstem. This focuses on avoiding harm. Next is the mammal brain, or the limbic system. This focuses on approaching rewards. And on top of all that is the primate brain, or cortex, which focuses on connecting with others. Now, Dr. Hanson affectionately calls these 3 levels of the brain the lizard, the mouse, and the monkey mind. and goes on to say how the lizard is always a bit anxious and is always keeping an eye out for danger, because a lizard that isn't vigilant will get eaten. And the mouse mind is always moving towards rewards. It's always sniffing out and chewing and eating food, because a mouse that stops eating will die. And the monkey mind is always obsessing whether it belongs to the group, because a monkey cast out from the group is a dead monkey. Now, think of all your human and non-human ancestors over the millions of years, and how the traits of these brains have helped keep them alive to lead to you standing here today. But now put those brains in the modern day. The lizard brain has evolved to react to tangible, immediate dangers. Now the lizard has a smartphone to deal with media constantly reminding it of all the terrible things that's going on in the world and all the things it should be afraid of. But it can't run from it, it can't fight it. Now the mouse mind, as you'll find out through our survival training, in the wild it's very difficult to find fat, salt, sugar and carbohydrates. So when the mouse found this in the wild, it would eat as much as possible in case it wouldn't get a chance to eat more. Nowadays, go into any shop and the vast majority of the food is nothing but fat, sugar and salt. So the mouse is just at it. Now the monkey mind is used to living in small groups, and so are we. As I said, 90% of our existence, we've only had to deal with social complexities of around 100 people. Now give that monkey mind social media to deal with, comparing itself to billions of others, reacting to mean comments and trying to feel belonging to a tribe through a shiny rectangle. Now, no wonder we are confused. Now Rick Hansen shares some nice mindfulness exercises that we can use to reassure our three brains, which I'll cover later in the course. But to illustrate my point further, here's a sketch from one of my past videos. Let's first look at some history. Now human history is a complex and controversial subject, but for the purposes of this video, I'm really going to oversimplify it. Now it's generally agreed that over 90% of human existence we have been hunter-gatherers. So if we put this in context and imagine the whole of human history like an 8-hour workday, they've spent all the morning and the majority of the afternoon moving about, hunting and gathering in the wild, living in semi-nomadic tribes between 50 and 150 people who based their lives around the rhythms and movements of wild food and resources. You'd then have settled down and planted some things in the last hour, discovered fossil fuels in the last minute, and only had a smartphone to deal with in the last few seconds. So when someone asks you, "What have you been up to today?" you'd probably say, "Well, mainly running around the woods with a bow and arrow. Tried out a bit of farming, which is fun, but the last minute has been intense." So with this in mind, let's learn some basic brain chemistry and the two pathways of our nervous system. Imagine you're a hunter-gatherer out for a stroll when suddenly a predator jumps out the bushes. Your brain triggers your sympathetic nervous system and your body is flooded with stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, causing your heart rate to increase and your eyes and blood vessels to dilate. You are triggered for fight, yeah! 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 Or for flight. By moving your body like this, the built-up energy is released and the fight or flight hormones dissipate. You can then return to your hunter-gatherer camp, satisfied after killing or escaping the predator, and all you need to worry about is keeping the fire lit, maintaining your tools, and resting for another day of predator fighting or flighting. Although there is times where you're working flat out just to achieve the basic needs, there's also lots of time just waiting. Waiting for the weather to change. Waiting for the tide to turn for better fishing. Waiting for dawn or dusk for better hunting. There's plenty of time away from distractions to be still. Reflect on the day. The thinking mind is occupied with menial tasks that are directly related to meeting our basic needs. Our brain now triggers our parasympathetic nervous system, and we are said to be in rest and digest mode. The mind has time to settle, and the body has time to repair itself. Go forward in time, you are now a 21st century human. Just another day in the office. When suddenly, you get a mean comment on social media. A terrible thing happened on the other side of the world. Something has affected your credit rating. The exact same fight or flight hormones flood your system, but the problems aren't tangible. You can't just hit it with a stick. And now it's increasingly hard to run away from. Even when we think we are resting and digesting, constant stimulation from technology often doesn't really allow us to relax completely, merely masks the symptoms and numbs the pain with short-term gratification. If these fight or flight hormones aren't released from the body and we stay immobile, studies are now showing that over time this can weaken the immune system and accumulate into some serious physical and mental health problems. So there you go. There is some context on where we have come from and what we have evolved to face. So I hope you enjoyed that, folks. Hope you enjoyed a little taster from Resilient Roots. So over on Resilient Roots, this then leads into another lesson on how we can use what we understand about our minds to safeguard our attention from technology, which then leads on to my journaling system, which I've been using for the past 8 years or so, and it's one of the most helpful things I've ever done in terms of navigating being human in the 21st century. Kind of using it as a mirror, as a place to dump your thoughts, your ideas and feelings into a consistent place away from screens. But I've actually turned the lessons of my journaling system into a completely free course called 4 Days to Focus. I'll also put a link to that below if you're interested. But thanks for watching, folks, and I'll see you next week in another pondering. Cheery bye.